this is David Friedman, and I'm here to talk about my 2 new CDs, about my book, Thought Exchange, and about a number of other topics. And I'm here to talk with Rabbi Saul Solomon on Dave's Gone By on UNC Radio.
Help is on the way! No, I don't mean that as an actual thing. I mean that as a song title. A song written by a fella named David Friedman, who is a songwriter, composer, he's an orchestrator, he works on Broadway, off Broadway, and his songs have been performed by the likes of Lucy Arnaz, Leslie Uggams, Petula Clark, Alison Krauss, Barry Manilow, one of the gods of the universe, and Lainey Kazan. Oh, I used to have posters of her back in seminary school. But beyond that, we're talking with this man because he has not one but 2 CDs out, and he also had a show on Broadway last year, co-written with Kathy Lee Gifford, of all people. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome, with a big shalom to the neighborhood, David Friedman. Shalom, David.
Shalom, thank you.
Oh, you're most welcome. Thank you for coming on the show. So, let us get the pushing and the marketing and the promoting out of the way first. You are pushing 2 compact discs of your music. Please tell us about them right now. Thank you.
Well, I have a lot of songs that have been recorded by many artists. You know, you listed some of them. There's also Nancy LaMott. There's also Diana Ross. There's lots of people, and I've been very blessed to have them record my songs. But a lot of people lately have been asking me to record my songs with me singing them so that you get the perspective of the author. And so I put out 2 CDs, A Different Light and Let Me Fly, that have 30 of my songs with me singing them the way I wrote them. And I also do a lot of speaking and a lot of touring with my work on Thought Exchange, which we can get into, and also with my music and giving concerts and my show Listen to My Heart. So I travel around the country a lot, and I'll sing a song and people say, oh, I'd like a recording of that song, and I didn't have them before. So now I have them all on CDs. It's a 2 CD set. They come separately, but suggest buying them both because it's half of my songs on one and half on the other, but they go together. And
it saves postage if you buy both at the same time. You know, you got to think Jewishly on these things, yes.
That's right, exactly. So, you know, sending these songs out, and the response has been wonderful, and people have been very happy to get them, and so I'm just trying to let everybody know that these CDs are available, and you can get them on Amazon, and you can get them on iTunes, and you can get them through my website.
Wait, what is your website, which is?
Midder, M-I-D-D-E-R, music.com.
MidderMusic.com. Now, you formed an actual record label, and it wasn't just to put out these 2 new CDs of yours. You had the Midder Music label for a while. Why did you form your own record label?
Well, there was an amazing singer named Nancy LaMott who I heard, you know, I knew her from cabaret days, and one day I walked into an act and I was just so overwhelmingly impressed. I said, people should be recording you. And she said, I know, but who's going to do it? And I heard myself say, I will. So I formed a record label, Midder Music. Midder was named after our dog. And I recorded all of Nancy LaMott's CDs. And Nancy died at the age of 43 in 1995. And I, you know, made a commitment to her that I wouldn't stop until the whole world heard her sing. So I continue to put out Nancy LaMott albums. And so this is my record label. So I also put out my own albums on that record label.
Very nice. So, and besides you and Nancy LaMott, who else? Any other artists?
It was just formed for Nancy LaMott, and so there's 2, to be specific, there's Midder Music Publishing and Midder Music Records, and Midder Music Records is just Nancy LaMott. Midder Music Publishing is all my stuff, all my songs, all my publishing, all my Disney writing, anything that is mine is on Midder, so it's all under the umbrella. If you Google Midder, M-I-D-D-E-R, you will get to me one way or another.
Now, you mentioned the D word, Disney. What is your connection, as if we don't know, to the Walt Disney Company?
Well, I grew up in this business with Alan Menken, who, of course, you know, won 10 Oscars and did all the, wrote a lot of the famous Disney movies. And so I conducted and did all the vocal arrangements for Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Pocahontas, Hunchback of Notre Dame. I wrote songs for Aladdin and the King of Thieves, for the Lizzie McGuire movie, for the Bambi sequel. I music supervised Beauty and the Beast Broadway. So I've had a long history with Disney, both as a conductor and vocal arranger and as a composer. So I've done a lot of the classic films with Disney and written a lot of the songs on various other films.
Dish some dirt, because we had Alan Menken on the program last month. He was talking about his career. He said some nice things about you. So why don't you say some wonderful things about Alan Menken? What's it like to work with him?
God. Well, Alan Menken and I had an amazing relationship. I mean, we could do a film on a 5-minute conversation. He was my favorite person to work with, and in fact, what happened was, when I was doing Beauty and the Beast Broadway, and we were out of town with it, I said to him, you know, Alan, I'm making a lot of money here, and I'm having a good time, but I'm really depressed. And he said to me, you're depressed because you're supposed to be doing what I'm doing. And he said, and I'm going to shoot myself in the foot here and tell you that you should take 3 years and phase me out of your life. So he did a very generous thing, because we worked together. We loved working together. It was so easy. But we both realized that if I was going to keep living, in order to do the kind of work I did for him and to do it as well as I did, I had to really steep myself in his music and have a deep understanding of it. And that started to get in the way of my writing my own music, and we both understood that. So he was I loved working with him. I still love him as a human being. You know, it was very generous of him to understand that I needed to go my own way professionally. But Alan is brilliant. I mean, Alan created this whole genre of the way Disney movies were done, and, you know, he's a great guy, and he's won every award that's to be won, and he deserves it. So I have nothing but rave things to say about Alan. I have no dirt. I have no, complaints, no anything.
Likewise from him, of course. What was your favorite project to work with him, be it Disney or otherwise?
Well, I have to say that Beauty and the Beast was so new and so original, and so it was like doing a Broadway musical on film. And of course also Howard Ashman, the great Howard Ashman, who we lost too early, was on that as well. And so I would have to say that project was really the most glorious, joyful thing to work on, and then we just continued to work on films like that. So, but actually my first project with him was a little show called God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater, which didn't run very long, but which I loved, and we've actually talked about the possibility of going back in and recording it. It hasn't happened yet, but I think, I don't really music direct anymore, but I would go back and do that just for old time's sake.
Oh, I asked Mr. Menken about that, and he said that was a really fun experience, and Kurt Vonnegut was actually very involved and very supportive, and they got to know him. I think Kurt Vonnegut's daughter is a big supporter of Menken's work in later years and all that sort of thing. It's been a very positive show, even though nobody has a copy of it yet.
As we get bigger and do these big, gigantic things, we have very fond memories of the times when we were starting out and we were kids and we were doing stuff for the sheer joy of it. And it doesn't matter whether it was a hit. We knew we were doing great work. And it's fun to go back to those things and think about them. I mean, it's in a certain way, it's why I sat down and recorded my own albums. It's kind of nice to go back to the beginnings and the roots and the simple things. And it's like why I work with a lot of young people, because when you work with young people, you remember why you got into this business, the sheer joy of it, the excitement, the passion that you had, which sometimes can get lost as you get very busy and under pressure and running all over the world.
When I work with young people, I just get earaches and head colds. That's all
That's what you work with them on, right?
We're talking with David Friedman. Can I call you David? May I call you David?
Sure you can, man.
David Friedman. That's better, much better. David Friedman. Now let me ask you, you also conducted shows on Broadway. Shows like Grease and Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat and Song and Dance. In the pit, as you were in those times, do you have any hilarious, fun anecdotes of things that happened in the audience or on stage or stuff you had a cover for the band? Stories, tell us.
Well, actually, that's funny because the first story did not happen in a show. I was educated at New England Conservatory and at the Dalcroze School of Music as a serious musician. I planned to be a serious musician. I thought that was the best thing to do. And when I was 17, I got a teacher's certificate from the Dalcroze School, and the head of the school sat me down and she said, "You are the youngest person ever to get this certificate, and you are one of the most gifted musicians who's ever walked through these doors, and you potentially have a great career ahead of you in music. However, recently, I've noticed a trashy nightclub idiom infiltrating your improvisations. And if you are not extremely careful, you could end up in the pit." Broadway show.
Oh, my God.
And I noticed, though, that I was quite pleased to hear that. And that's what sort of turned me toward that. And being in the pit of a Broadway show, I mean, all sorts of hilarious things happen. I mean, I was the last conductor of Grease on Broadway, and when you have a long-running show like that, we had a bass player who had a 50-foot cord so that he could walk out of the pit and talk to people while the show was going on. We once had somebody call places in the second act in Joseph, and my light went on, and I thought, gee, it's awfully short, but my light went on, so I started, and the curtain's supposed to bleed through and go up, and it doesn't, and suddenly somebody comes into the pit and says, keep going! And so I keep conducting, and I said to the orchestra, okay, when I give this beat, we all go back to the beginning. Ready, everybody, go. And then the curtain came up, so I said, what happened? And I said, well, somebody was fooling around and said, places, places, house to house, and they went. Oh. And so all the actors suddenly hear the music, and they're half-dressed in their dressing rooms, and they can't, get down there. These things happen all the time. People miss lines, people fall apart. That's sort of the fun of it. I always say the fun of Broadway is, it's live. You could die, so something can happen. It's not the same every night.
Well, did you ever see anybody die on stage or in the audience? Literally?
Well, in the audience, yes. We have on occasion stopped the show because someone had a heart attack, and it's a very strange experience to just suddenly stop and then pick up again. And I've had people get sick on stage. I've had someone get stabbed on stage, and the curtain had to come down.
Whoa! How did somebody get stabbed on stage?
There's a knife fight, and the lead guy got stabbed. It was in Saravah, my first show, and
with Tova Feldshuh, the adorable, delicious
Feldshuh. That's right. And it was very interesting because P.J. Benjamin got stabbed at the beginning of the show, and they had to bring the curtain down, and he had to go to the hospital. I mean, it wasn't serious, but he was bleeding. And his understudy went on. Now, his understudy was ready, had done the understudy rehearsals, but he had never done the show with Tova. He had done it with the understudy.
Sure.
And it was a real credit to Tova's acting ability that every single line came out different because she just was playing it to the person who was in front of her. She was not planning her lines. She was now on stage with a different human being. And so the show was very fresh and exciting. And those things are very exciting. I mean, I remember one time when we moved Beauty and the Beast from the Palace to the Lunt, and it was opening night, and a set that moves so that Gaston can be on a precipice and get pushed off and fall to his death. It broke down, and so they took an hour intermission, which wasn't so bad because, it was opening night, so it was all us theater folk there, and we just, talked and stuff, but they couldn't fix it. So in the second act, when Gaston had to die and fall off the precipice, he simply walked off the stage. They had to play it on the floor. And I said to him afterwards, I said, what exactly did you die of? Embarrassment? He couldn't fall off. And so you're constantly adjusting in theater. That's the fun of it, and that's the thing is that people are professionals, and when something goes wrong, everybody rises to the occasion, and the audience usually doesn't even know it.
Do you have any more stories? I love hearing these. I think they're wonderful. Any anecdotes of, again, things that went wrong that were funny, or even a moment in the theater that was so spectacularly right and moving? Perhaps.
Well, funny is, I remember in Saravah we were using the first automated light board, computerized, and it got one cue ahead, so it blacked out for all the scenes, and it lit up. It was a nightmare. Nobody knew in the audience. Back and said, what happened? They didn't know. I mean, I would have to say the highlight of my career was not in a stage play. It was in a movie. When we did Beauty and the Beast, and we had the New York Philharmonic, and Angela Lansbury came in, and what you do is you record the orchestra with the singer singing, and then you go home and the singer does their performance to the tape, the actual performance of the film. And so we recorded Beauty and the Beast, the song Beauty and the Beast, and then everyone went home, and Angela Lansbury sat right in front of me and sang that song to me. What you're hearing on the movie is she's singing to me. And that, I would have to say, was the highlight of my career. Angela Lansbury was just an amazing person to work with. And it was amazing to watch her work.
Wow, that is a great... Can you imagine Angela Lansbury singing directly to you a classic song that you helped conduct and arrange, and you know the people who wrote.
That was really a highlight. And so, but there are many, you're working with wonderful people, really major people who just are, when they're getting to work, it's not at all about the stardom, it's not about the attitude, it's simply about the work, and they are really good at it. So it's a very joyous experience.
We can have a little bit of dirty laundry, just a little bit, of the people that you've watched in the process of making the movies and also the theater especially, who, besides Angela, were the most delightful, wonderful people, and who are one or two people who were kind of cruddy?
I don't know, cruddy, but I would have to say, I mean, most of the people we worked with at Disney were wonderful. They were professional and delightful. You know, Jerry Orbach did Beauty and the Beast also. Someone who I have to say I was a little concerned about working with was Robin Williams, because I thought, oh my God, he's going to be so crazy that, you know, I'm going to lose my mind. Robin Williams in person is quiet and gentle and delightful and unbelievably hardworking, and then he gets in front of a microphone and something happens to him. It's very clear that it's not coming from him, it's coming to him. He opens a floodgate to God, as it were, and what pours through him is brilliant. And I'll tell you a wonderful story. Robin came in to record Aladdin, and in one of the breaks, the bass player came up to him and said, Mr. Williams, I hate to bother you, but my wife is one of your biggest fans, and she's in the hospital, and I'm wondering if you could sign this for her. He said, what's her phone number? And he spent this whole break just chatting with this guy's wife, finding out how she was doing, and made her year. and you just love people. Like Kathy Lee Gifford is like that. She said to me once, she said, I know I'm no great shakes, I'm no different than anybody else, but if it makes someone's day for me to sign something for them or talk to them, why not?
Now, how did you get hooked up? Because you've done quite a lot with Kathy Lee Gifford. It's not just you did one show with her. You've been collaborating with her for a while. How did that connection happen?
The way that happened was about 30 years ago, I conducted Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat on Broadway. There was an assistant to the producer named Victoria Lang, and she came to me and she said, may I sit in the pit? I'd like to learn about the pit. And I said, sure, just wear black and don't come between me and the players. And we became friendly, and she began to do a lot of benefits and stuff and have me work for her. And when Live with Regis and Kathy Lee happened, Victoria was one of the first producers on it. And so she would call me in. If there was a person who needed a piano player, like Tony Orlando would be on, or Bobby Vinton, or Carol Burnett, or whoever, I would come in and I would play piano for them. And Kathy was always so aware of who was around her, so it didn't matter if you were the piano player or the hairdresser or what. She knew your name, she said hello to you, and one day I gave her a tape of some of my songs, and as she described it, she said, oh God, I thought here's another person giving me a tape. But she listened to them, and she went crazy over the songs, but she also went crazy over the singer. A lot of them were sung by Nancy LaMott. Who is that? And she proceeded to really promote Nancy. She got her on her show, even though Nancy was not national news at the time. And when Nancy was dying of cancer, Kathy really took care of her. And so Kathy and I became very good friends. And then 5 years ago, I mean, we've done a lot of things together. I wrote a lot for her, and we've been working on Scandalous, she and David Pomerantz and I, for 12 years. And then about 5 years ago, she had an idea to do something called Everyone Has a Story on the Today Show, where the first Thursday of every month, people send in their stories, and we pick a story. Kathy and I write a song about that story. We fly the people in, they tell their story, and then we have a star from Broadway currently sing the song, and I play it for them. It's been a very wonderful thing in which people feel really recognized, and a lot of issues have been brought to the fore. And so Kathy and I are now, you know, I've known her almost 30 years, and we're great friends now.
Oh, my. And are you working on another project, a longer thing?
We're not working on any project at the moment, but we still do this once a month, and we just wrote a song for Hoda's birthday. You know, we love to get together and write things whenever we can, and I'm sure there will be other projects, but right now, you know, we're taking a little breather, and I also have 4 shows that are on their way to Broadway from other arenas, so I'm very busy working on those shows.
Wow, now you make me want to ask 2 different questions at the same time, so I'll start with one. The first one is, what's something people would not expect about Kathy Lee Gifford off the TV set? What's she like?
Oh, my God. Well, considering her tabloid reputation, what they would not expect is that Kathy Lee is one of the simplest, most generous, most not diva-like people you ever want to meet in your life. For instance, she started recording with me. I brought her to my friend Dave Lefkowitz's studio in New Jersey, and it was in his mother's basement, and she was still on Regis and Kathy Lee, and she came in, she brought tons of food for everybody, she set it up, and Dave's mother, who used to come down, you know, just like in a bathrobe, suddenly comes down like in a cocktail dress, you know, she's all dressed out because Kathy Lee is there, and she introduces herself, and she says, Kathy Lee, I hate to bother you, but my best girlfriend is upstairs, and she would just love to meet you. And Kathy turned to Dave and said, Dave, are we in a rush? And he said, no. And she said, do you have any tea? And Kathy went up and had tea with the girls. Kathy is really an incredibly generous and easy to be with person, and all the sort of, whenever someone says, oh, I don't like Kathy Lee, I always say, do you know her? And they never do. They know what they read. And people would be very shocked.
But I'm also wondering, is she born-again Christian? She's a fairly religious and spiritual person. Am I right on this part?
I would say, yes, she is. But it's interesting because my partner is a unity minister, which is completely the opposite end of the spectrum. And Kathy, I would say that what Kathy is a practicing Christian. She really practices Christianity in terms of that it means loving people, that it means accepting people, that it means, in her mind, not to speak for her, but I've had discussions with her, that, it's God's purview to decide about people, not hers. So Kathy lives with a tremendous openness, a tremendous lack of prejudice, and she has her religious beliefs. I wouldn't even call them religious, I'd call them spiritual, that she doesn't foist on anybody else.
Well, that's huge, and because I was kind of wondering, assuming that your partner is another male person, so I would understand. I'm wondering, Dave once interviewed Kristen Chenoweth a few months ago, and she has this wonderful attitude about, gay people and stuff, even though she's fairly heavy-duty Christian. She manages to make that work with the fact that she can be tolerant and accepting and loving and all that sort of thing.
Well, Kathy says, this is not my job to judge. It says something in the Bible, and, she believes that the Bible is God's word. I don't happen to believe that. I believe it was written by people. But it's not hers to judge. It's hers to love. And then, whatever is the truth is not hers. So Kathy has no problem with gay people. She's no problem with anything. Her kids are, colorblind, and her...
Well, I hope they get good glasses.
Yeah, right, yeah. I know that Cassidy, her best friend, was black, and Cassidy didn't even notice that her best friend was black. That doesn't even factor into it. So it's a dichotomy, because there's a religion says this, but as a person, she told me a story once about a minister who said, a fundamentalist minister who got up in front of his church and said, there are 5 million children starving in this world at the moment, and you people don't give a shit. And then he stopped and said, and you people are more upset that I just said shit in church than that 5 million children are starving.
Nice.
What's wrong with that?
That's really, I like that.
Yeah. So there's something that goes on with that really...
That's why I make sure to say shit at least 5 times in every sermon that I give.
That's right. It's very important.
I want people to get acclimated to the word, so I use it frequently, and then they can concentrate on other things. So the first time I say it, everybody goes, oi, 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 you said the word. Second time, it's like they giggle a little. Third or fourth time, they're saying it with me. Fifth time, we're singing about it. We make up our own songs about shit. It's wonderful.
It's just a word.
Now, with a name like David Friedman,
right.
I have to assume that you were born of the tribe. Are you no longer one of us?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm no longer one of us. I've always been a cultural Jew. I'm not a religious Jew. I'm a cultural Jew. Actually, Unity, which of course, since my partner's a minister, I attend Unity. And what Unity is a spiritual exploration where people of all religions come, because it doesn't have a liturgy. You can be anything. And in fact, one day my partner was lighting the Christ candle in church, and he couldn't get it lit. So I got up and tried to light it, and I couldn't. And then Ed, who's also Jewish, got up to try and light it, and he couldn't. And Ed's wife said, how many Jews does it take to light a Christ candle?
So is Unity Unitarians? Is that those are the
No. Unity Unity teaches the teachings of Jesus, but does not worship Jesus. It teaches Jesus as one of the many people who understood that we all are blessed by God. We all have the same potential within us. There's no worship involved. There's teachings. It's, as Sean says, Jesus kept saying you, and we kept saying him.
But why Jesus then, instead of, say, the teachings of the Buddha or the teachings of Moses in the Old Testament, or even how to win friends and influence people?
Well, Unity actually does include all of that, but Unity came out of people of the Christian faith who felt that there was something missing from that, and so it came from that. Even Judaism, and Christianity are not that unrelated, but it came out of people. There are a lot of people who are disenfranchised with their church, but who like the teachings. It just happens to be Jesus, but Unity is definitely clear that if you looked at Moses, if you looked at Buddha, you'd find the same thing. And in a Unity, we didn't even call it church, it's called Unity Center. There are classes on all these different things.
Actually, if you looked really closely at Moses, you would know that he dyed his roots. He was actually blonde hair, and then he went with red. I don't know why he did that.
Well, and is that the reason that Jewish women to this day are bleach blondes?
There you go. Well, also because they have to wear the wigs, so it can't really...
That's right, exactly, yeah.
Noticeable
That gives them
under
the
that.
ability to have the hair be any color.
We're talking with David Friedman here. He is a composer, he is a conductor, and you mentioned, and I did not forget this, that you have not one, not two, not three, and not five either, but 4 projects that are on some level trying to be whipped to shape for Broadway. One of them, I guess, is King Island Christmas, but what are they?
King Island Christmas is an oratorio that we've actually had about 50 productions of, and it's a wonderful piece about a community that bands together to do something that it takes the whole community to do, and it takes place on a small Alaskan island, and it's a wonderful way for communities to involve the chorus and the orchestra and the children and the adults and everybody, and so it's been used for a fundraiser for many, many, many things, and it's now sort of moving toward the opera, probably. There's a show called Chasing Nicolette, Nicolette, and that is the show that's really on the front burner. It's about the Middle East in the 13th century. It's about black versus white. It's about money versus love. It's about class. It's funny. It's in verse. It makes a point. We've had wonderful readings. We're signing with a Broadway producer now. That should be up next year.
Now, wait. Who are your collaborators on this?
Peter Kellogg is my collaborator on... Debbie Brevoort is my collaborator on King Island Christmas.
Okay.
The other 3, Peter Kellogg is the collaborator. We have a show that's going to be up in Norwich at the Spirit of Broadway Theater, which is a wonderful theater in Norwich, Connecticut, which does new works. And there's a show called Front Page Girl about the life of Nellie Bly, who was sort of the first investigative female reporter and really changed the face of investigative reporting. And that show has had success around the country, and we're doing a production there with hopes of bringing that in. And then last year we did a show there that won 15 out of their 18 awards called Desperate Measures, which is Shakespeare's Measure for Measure in the Wild West in verse.
Measure for Measure. Usually they do Taming of the Shrew in the Old West, but Measure for Measure, interesting. Okay.
It's hilarious and it's touching, and we have all of these different shows, and I'm very excited about them, and I love working with Peter and starting to really, it takes about 12 to 15 years to get a show to Broadway, and so I'm...
Why the hell does it take that long?
For many reasons. First of all, it takes a long time to get it right, especially the book. And what you do is you write for a few years, and then you put it in front of people. And when you put it in front of people, you find that you have all sorts of things to fix. And then you write it more, and you put it in front of people. And then once you've done that, you have to get people to produce it around the country so you can see it, and you get your reviews, and you change it more. And then you have to start raising a fortune of money to get it done. And then you have to find a theater. And it just takes a long time. It just really is a long process, and you have to be willing to do it, and you have to love it. You have to love what you're doing. So, we've put in our dues, and now they're starting to bear fruit, and we're very excited about it.
Well, can I ask, who is the producer on Chasing Nicolette, the one that's on the front burner, as it were?
Well, we haven't signed yet.
Oh, sorry.
But we're really we're very excited about who's producing it, and we're very excited about what's happening with this.
Were there other shows a decade or 2 or 3 ago that you were writing and working on? Not counting the Alan Menken stuff, of course, but stuff that you were writing for Broadway that you always hoped and it just never happened, and you always wondered why.
Well, there actually is a Jewish show called Goodbye and Good Luck based on a Grace Paley short story. That has never happened. It might happen still. It's a very specialized show. I'm trying to think. There's a show we have called Lincoln in Love that's about Abraham Lincoln's young life, and that seems to not be a Broadway show, but I have a feeling that's going to find a home in other places. So they find homes. Sometimes you lose interest in them. Sometimes they seem to not pan out, But, you just keep working, and as I say, we're working on a lot of them at once, so whichever one rises to the top is the one that we...
Yes, that's... I recall Alan Menken saying in our conversation that the most important thing is to keep a lot of irons in the fire.
Oh, absolutely, and he has shows that have never really seen the light of day, but he's always working on a million things, and he's had shows that, after many, many years suddenly rose to the top. And he's absolutely right. That's the way you do it, and he's always done that very well. Because you want to write, and you learn from each show. You learn things about other shows, so it all comes out in the wash. It all works out if you work on 10 shows and one of them gets to the top, you're doing very well.
Yeah, this is true, and we're very happy to talk with David Friedman. I have just a couple of minutes left with him, but also wanted to ask, we were talking about the religion, the spirituality thing, the unity thing, and the Christ candles. Is the book that you have written specifically about this sort of religious thing, or is it something separate?
It's not religious. I've always been into New Thought. I've always been looking at positive thinking and stuff like that. And about 10 years ago, I had the opportunity to take over a artist support group at Unity. And I started to look at positive thinking and realized that, books like The Secret and stuff like that, and everybody knows that you take on a positive thought and, positive things happen. Why don't we do it? And I began to look at what is in our way. What is it that we're missing? And what we're missing is that when you start to take on a positive thought, and if that thought has been associated with challenging sensations, like let's say you were a child and you said, I can do this, and someone slapped you across the face. Anytime you take on that thought, you're going to feel uncomfortable. And any thought, the perfect example is when I go on stage.
Yeah.
My heart pounds, I shake, I feel uncomfortable. If I could not be with that heart pounding, or if I thought that meant I couldn't go on stage, I'd never go on the stage. So what I teach people to do is take on the thoughts. First of all, look at the world, see what you're seeing, and assume that that's what you're thinking. And then take on the thoughts you want to take on, but notice how you feel in your body and be willing to feel that way. So be willing to know that running the marathon comes with painful legs and with not being able to breathe and being uncomfortable. And so when we can be with our experience and know that really all it is experience, I like to say, I don't even know if I'm talking to you on the phone. I know I'm experiencing talking to you on the phone. If I was dreaming, I would think I was talking to you on the phone too. All we have is our interior experience, and if we're willing to have our complete experience, our lives change and we get to think anything we want and achieve anything we want. And so I wrote a book called The Thought Exchange, and I am doing workshops all over the country, and people are writing to me from all over the world, and it's become this huge thing, and I'm working on my second book.
There were thoughts you left unexpressed in the first one?
Well, it's just you learn more, or you get, my second book is called The Healing Power of Negative Thoughts. Stop being afraid of your negative thoughts and use them to heal. And what that's about is that when we've had childhood experience, what I call our inner child, is always going to remember them. So if you got hurt in something, anytime you go into it, you're going to have the thought, I was hurt. That's your inner child. That does not mean you're going to get hurt now. So stop trying to obliterate what that child is thinking and hear it. Know that anytime I go on a stage, it's like I had a wonderful experience. I was winning a Lifetime Achievement Award for the MAC Awards.
Oh, yes. The MAC is the cabaret people, by the way. Yes.
And Lucy Arnaz was presenting it to me, and we're both backstage, and we're pacing the floor. She used to go on and talk about me for 5 minutes, and then I have to go out and sing and talk. And so we're both kind of pacing the floor, and Lucy does Thought Exchange, and she turned to me and she said, okay, what are my sensations? My throat is tight, my stomach is churning, my hands are shaking. And just at that moment, they said, ladies and gentlemen, won't you welcome the one and only Lucy Arnaz? And she turned to me and she said, I can go out there with that. And she walked out.
Nice. Oh, my God.
Don't have to get rid of it. So I teach people that if you're having uncomfortable sensations, have them. If you're having panic attacks, have them. It's what we think they mean.
Does it work on prostates? I wonder, because mine is constantly uncomfortable. Is there a thought I don't know.
Have the discomfort. That's all it is.
Deal with it. Know that my prostate is bogging and soggy and horrible, but it's all right.
Know that it's that way. And also, you see, sometimes if you feel discomfort, like I had one client who said, I had this terrible pain, and I thought of David, and she said, just feel it, just feel it. And when she just felt it, she said, I need to go to the hospital, and she had a kidney stone. So feel the pain in your prostate, and it might guide you to do something about it.
That's a very...
to find something that you didn't think of before because you're ignoring it.
Now, the name of the book that you have published is called Thought Exchange.
The Thought Exchange.
The Thought Exchange.
And it has a subtitle, Overcoming Our Resistance to Living a Sensational Life.
Wow. I don't know. I wish I could be a positive thinker like you. Maybe I've got to read the book. How do I get the book again? Is it at MiggerMusic?
You can get it on Amazon. You can go to thethoughtexchange.com. And I'm not a positive thinker. I just think whatever I think and feel whatever I feel, and it's okay. You don't have to think positive. Just notice what you're thinking.
Yeah, you were born Jewish.
Or it's an invisible consciousness noticing yourself.
Last question for the delightful and talented, of course, David Friedman is in coming up and as a child and learning music and all that, who were your favorite composers, and were there conductors and arrangers that you really loved and learned things from?
Oh, there were a lot of people. I mean, composers, it was probably, originally Mozart and Beethoven and Bach, the big three. I would say that in terms of pop music, strangely enough, as I say, a lot of people make fun of him, but Barry Manilow, to me, wrote songs of real passion and beauty and open-heartedness, and Barry has been so good to me. But, I've always loved Barry Manilow. I grew up on the Supremes and on Dionne Warwick, and Dionne Warwick was always my favorite singer. I finally got to meet her last year after a lifetime. Arrangers, Peter Matz. I loved Peter Matz's arranging. And conductors, I'm trying to think which conductor. But it's weird because symphonic conductors, I remember in college I worked with Eric Leinsdorf a lot because I was in the chorus at New England Conservatory, and I got to Seiji Ozawa. I got to work under these conductors and really see them work. But my sights pretty quickly got set on Broadway.
That's fine. I meant actually Broadway, people like the Lehman Engels and the whoever else.
Oh, Lehman, and there was a generation before me, Stanley Lebowski, Don Pippin, Peter Howard. Those are the people who Paul Gemignani is one of the most precise conductors I've ever seen in my life. When I was on Broadway, on my night off, I would always sit in someone else's pit and watch them conduct. To just, learn things from them. And what I learned was it's much more about what you're hearing inside than your exact technique. It's about conducting is a matter of you hear it and the orchestra plays it. Doesn't matter what you do.
And what about arranging? You mentioned Peter Matz. What was it about Peter Matz's musical arrangements that struck you?
Well, he did all the Barbra Streisand stuff, the early Streisand stuff, and, that was a dream to work with him. And Nancy LaMott, it was her dream, and Peter Matz did orchestrate her fifth album, and that was a dream come true. Bill Brohn is an amazing Broadway orchestrator, and he actually gave me lessons for a while. And I remember I said to him, Bill, there's so many decisions I could make. How do I decide? And he said, make one. And I've never forgotten that.
But maybe give us a little lesson, too. Like, they're both wonderful, let's say, Brohn and Matz. How are they different?
Yeah.
What do they do differently in taking a piece of music and arranging it for the human ear?
Well, Peter Matz was much more, they were both extremely educated and versatile people, but Peter Matz was much more versed in the pop idiom of the 60s and stuff like that. Not pop like rock, but, the Streisand and people like that. Bill Brohn was one of the most symphonic Broadway arrangers ever. His orchestrations always had a real symphonic component, and he'd use very unusual and interesting instrument combinations and tone colors. And so they're actually quite different. Bill was sort of a dramatic, steeped in the classics, and Peter Matz was steeped in popular genre. So I learned a lot from both of them and enjoyed working with both of them tremendously.
Well, we just learned a whole lot from you. This is why I love to do these conversations with theater people, with composers, with fine, nice Jewish, well, semi-Jewish unity boys. Like David Friedman. David, it has been absolutely a pleasure. I sure hope all four of your shows that are Broadway-ish bound get there, or get to at least where they will be shown at their best advantage.
Yeah.
Wherever they're meant to be shown, then they should be there. And I just want to thank you so much for sharing with us and being in the neighborhood.
Well, thank you. This was an absolute pleasure. Anytime.